Hi, this is Mahesh Ravi. So today I'm going to show you how to create the raptor running sequence that you just saw in After Effects. So we're going to use a couple of files. So I have downloaded a couple of images that we'll be using to create that sequence. So the first thing that I have is a CG, a green screen footage of raptor running. I have a lens flare, I have a forest background, I have some foliage here. So we will be using all this to build up the scene that we just saw. So let's go into After Effects, and this is the composition build up that I've used to create that VFX sequence here. So there are a lot of things happening, and I will run you through the process of doing this, how each of these layers are managed in After Effects to create a realistic composition. And I hope this is going to give you a lot of tips on making your animations look a little more realistic, when you work with a totally CG setup. So if you notice here, there are a lot of things which are happening. As I was saying, there is a masking here. The raptor is actually going behind the tree, and one instance it is actually blocking the light here, which is coming out of the sun, and it just goes like that. And it's also it's a bit of grass which is in the foreground, and another thing that you can see is the shadows from the tree is actually moving. It's a very dynamic shadow which you can see on top of the dinosaur. It's moving. So these might seem like complicated steps to create all this happening, but it's pretty easy and straightforward. We'll do it. So let's start with the composition. Let's go set up a new composition right here. Let's call it dinosaur running, and maybe 6-second animation is good enough. Let's click OK. We have a composition. Now let's take our background layer right down to this. We can scale it. So right now the quality, I'm setting it to full. I'm going to scale this and to position it somewhere here. Okay. Now let's call it the background. We need the tree to be masked out. We need the tree to be in the foreground when the raptor is running. So let's make a duplicate of this background layer, and let's call it the tree. So we have the tree layer here. Let's take the pen tool, and we are going to create a mask for the tree. So let's find there. So it seems okay. So we have the tree is masked out like this. This is fine. You can refine the edges by using the Bezier curves. You can select the vertices and then modify that. But for this tutorial, I'm not going to do. Not going to waste time sitting and adjusting all the vertices. So we have a tree right now. So tree is actually on the foreground. We need a little bit of grass also, which needs to be on the foreground. So we will create a second duplicate of the background layer. Put on top of the tree. We'll call it the grass layer, and we'll create a mask of this. So right from maybe let's start from here. Let's go like that. Let's create a very rough map. I think that's good enough. Let's close the mask so we have the grass mask as well, so you can see it like that. What we need is the edges. We need to feather the edges, so just open that, go to masks, mask feather, and increase the feather of the edges. So I think that's sort of okay for the time being. So we have the grass, the tree, and the background in separate layers. Now let's bring the other image that we have. It's a wild grass PNG. Sort of bring it right above the background layer. So we have this, scale it down a bit, and we can position it so like this. So I think we need the grass to be under that, okay, which is so fine. We have this wild grass image right there. We can bring it a little down. Okay, it sort of works. Maybe the edges needs a little bit of smoothing, so let's call it wild grass, this layer. We need to mask the edges, so let's create a rough mask, increase the feather a bit. Right. So I think that's smooths it out. So we have the scene almost set up. Now we need the lens flare. We need the lens flare to be brought in. So let's bring in the lens flare. So we have the lens flare. We'll put it right on the background layer. We'll keep it somewhere. I think in between this tree is what it should be, and we need to change the blending mode to screen. Okay, so sort of works like that. Here also the edges are being shown, so just go to the mask tool and create a rough mask. Okay, go to mask feather and increase the feather radius so that the edges are not visible right now. So this is fine. The scene setup is good. Now let's bring our dinosaur here. So we have the dinosaur clip. Drag him. Rename the lens flare right now. Lens flare. So we have the dinosaur running here. So let's bring him top of that. Okay, so let's key the green out. So go to color key, add the color key to the footage, open that, effects, color key, key color. You can choose the color that you want to key out. So I'm going to choose this. Let's choose this color. Select OK. Increase the tolerance a bit. Matte choker, and you drag and drop it right to the dinosaur layer. It's going to clean up the edges, so we can increase the tolerance a bit more. Now let's position this. We want the dinosaur to be somewhere here when he's running. Okay, so let's position him right around here. We need to animate the path, the motion. So let's bring up the position. So we'll keyframe the right position, and in about 5 to 6 seconds, let's move him right here. Alright, so let's play it back right now. What is happening? Let's switch the quality to maybe a quarter so that we can see what is happening. Okay, so we have the dinosaur running like that, and it's sort of fine. Okay, so yeah, so this seems all right. So there are a couple of things that we need to add to make the scene more realistic. The first thing is the color data that the dinosaur is having. It's too bright. So let's go to effects panel and search for brightness and contrast. Add that to the dinosaur layer. Let's bring the brightness down a bit, and also the contrast. Okay, that is sort of seems okay right now. Another thing that we need to add is when the dinosaur is closing the lens flare, we need a blocking effect there. The light array needs to be blocked. So to get that effect, to make that effect look more natural, we will have to duplicate the lens flare and drag it on top of all the layers. So it's going to look something like this. So the moment it's going to block the lens flare, what we're going to do is we will select the lens flare 2 layer, go to edit, split layer, and we will trim the position so that it just moves like that and then comes back when the layer is not being blocked like this. So if you play it back, you'll know that what exactly is happening when the light actually the raptor, when he's blocking the light, it is going to stop the light ray from passing, and then it will appear immediately after he has passed the ray of light. So that's an interesting effect. It adds a lot more realism without too much work. So another thing that we need to do is to adjust the brightness and contrast as change the brightness value of the dinosaur the moment he enters the light. So to do that, what we need to do is go to a position, so expand the brightness and contrast setting, create a keyframe for brightness here, and move it to this, and then reduce the brightness a bit. So we have the brightness working like that, and it goes back again. So it's a very subtle effect that people might not notice, but it adds a lot more realism to your scene. Cool. So now another thing to add a little more realism to this scene is that basically our raptor is running through a very thick forest, so obviously the light is going to come through a lot of leaves on trees, and it's going to fall on the raptor, so it will create a very dynamic shadow on the dinosaur itself. So we have to create that. There is an easy way to create that. To do that, you just have to duplicate the dinosaur layer and go to effects palette, and then search for fractal noise. So you just drag and drop fractal noise to that layer, so we're going to get something like that, right? So what we'll do is we'll change the basic parameter to say something. Swirly is too much. Let's take soft linear works. We can invert this, and what we're going to do is we will change the we can change the scaling as well. If we need, turn off the uniform scaling, we can scale it down a bit, like actual shadows, how it is looking and all that. Okay, so after doing all that, what we need to do is change the blending mode of the second layer to multiply, so it will look like the shadows are already there on the scene. But the problem is that the shadows are not moving. So when the dinosaur is moving, the shadows are supposed to be moving also. So we need to animate this fractal noise. So what we need to animate is the sub offset here. So just go to the beginning of the animation, just click on the sub offset, create a keyframe there, go back to the end of the animation and change the sub offset. It will change the shadow as well. It will create a very dynamic shadow right here. So let's see. So the shadow is also so that's about it, and you will have a pretty well composed scene right now. You can export your composition.